This is Tech Gears. My name is Levi, and today I wanted to go over why the Sony 16-35 2.8 GM is just the best lens I've ever used, and actually might be worth the money. All right, so we're starting off this review as just a vlog. Now, what's cool about this is I am at 16 millimeters, so plenty wide. You can see everything. Honestly, I can hold it really close. My elbow is literally resting on my body like that, and I think you guys can see my face fine. It looks good. 2.8, one thing I do want you to notice is how does that background separation look? Let's switch hands here. Is it pleasing? Do we need a little more bokeh? Is the 2.8 enough? Because if you're buying this to vlog, the argument, and it's a good argument, is there's other lenses you can vlog with that are potentially better, definitely cheaper. So probably the best and most synonymous lens for vlogging that I think everyone would agree is the best vlogging lens is going to be the Sony G. All right, so now we're at 1.8. This is 20 mil. Is it sharper? Is the bokeh a little bit more pleasing? Now I'm able to hold my arm in, again, kind of like this, fairly tight, and I like to think this is still fine. You're getting a little closer to my head, but honestly, if I wanted to hold it out between 16 and 20, to be honest, 24, and I even done 35 mil. Check out my other video on what's the best focal length is to vlog from. As long as someone can see your whole head, you know, it's not cut off like this, or, you know, you're not holding it and you're just like a jerk. Just hold your arm up. This is fine. The 20 mil is one of my favorite lenses. Absolutely love it. And the only reason I'm potentially getting rid of it is because the 16-35 is that good. I like being able to have it more versatile. So if you think it's a little bit better than the 20 mil, the 20 mil is a $900 lens. Used, it's about $700 to $800. So I'm trying to build a case where the 16-35 is worth the money. And to me, it is worth that, which means you're not spending your money on this and potentially other lens this is going to replace. So let's jump back to the 16-35 and look at some street photography. All right, so when you're just doing street photography, obviously the 35 1.8 is going to give you just some amazing bokeh. But if you look at those images, the image quality, the sharpness, not to mention the focus speed, focus accuracy, and just the overall usage of the 35 mil, the 2.8 versus the 1.8, I still think you can get some amazing shots. Even looking at these photos here, I think the 35 2.8 holds up really well. Now, I'm actually vlogging on the 35 1.8 right now. You guys can see here. Obviously, this is tight. My arm is literally like stretched out, and I have a little grip here. But you could do 35. Everyone talking about you need to have the 16, you need to have a 14, a 12. Like, you don't need to be that wide. Now, I think the most comfortable is probably that 20, but even going back and forth, it's pretty cool to know whatever you get, make the best of it. And I just think that 16-35, if you're doing street photography, if you want a nice 35 mil lens, if you're doing vlogging, honestly, it does them both really well. And again, a 35 mil lens, if we're doing the 1.8 from Sony, is about $700. Used market $600. If you're looking at some from Samyang, you're still looking at $400-500. Either way, you put these two lenses together, you're spending thereabouts on the used market $1,300, on the new market $1,600 on just these two options. But we're gonna go over a few more things you can do with the 16 to 35. Here we're taking a look at some of the beautiful B-roll of just slow motion, wide angle shots that the 16 mil can really give you. Now you might be thinking to yourself, you need to go wider. Well, now we're at 14 mil, and hopefully you can see, honestly, even though this is wider and probably a little more distorted comparatively, and I'm actually using the 12 to 24 GM. Actually, this is at 12. Let's come in at 14 mil. I can't honestly say you always need to go a little bit wider, but it is nice. So if you are thinking you need a wide angle lens for real estate and to get those epic wide angle shots, I think 90% of the time you're going to be fine with the 16 to 35. I'm happy I have the 12 to 24, but honestly, there's a lot of times I second guess why it's in my collection, because the 16 is generally wide enough and you're able to get the job done. Another big use I like to use this lens for is just in studio shots. Now, 2.8 is not the highest bokeh, but honestly, the background blur behind me, kind of the subject separation, I think looks fine. Now, the best one that I have in my collection, I think works a little bit better, is going to be the 24 1.4, and I want you guys to take a look at the 16 to 35 GM in a studio where you want a really clean image and you want to have some background separation versus what the 24 is going to give us. All right, so here's my normal studio setup that's been for a while, where I shoot on APS-C. This is a 24 millimeter. Now, I used to shoot on this 16 because I do like that 24 mil shot, so I have been changing up using this 24 on my full frame. But as you can see behind me, even at 1.4, which is be equivalent to a 35, say 2.1, hopefully visually you guys can give me the math, the 24 on this still looks really comparable, and I'm still very happy with what it's providing me versus the 35 2.8. Now, I do prefer to shoot in a fixed focal length in the studio, but it is kind of nice being able to move the lens and be able to zoom out, maybe give me a zoom in a little bit more depending what we're looking at versus having a fixed focal length. But if you're looking for a studio lens, ideally a lot of folks do like getting just a prime so you know exactly what you're getting. But if you have the versatility of a zoom that's that sharp and has focus that's that good, it kind of begs the question, do you really need to get a prime, or does that fill in the loopholes? All right, so we're going to slap the 16 to 35 back on this, and you guys tell me what it looks like. We're going to go to a 16 mil, or no, we're going to go right at 24, 2.4 or 2.8, so it matches exactly what we're seeing here on the APS-C. All right, so this is the same shot, same camera, same focal length, just obviously at a higher or lower aperture. We're at 2.8 here on the 16 to 35. We went over vlogging, went over some, I guess, regular photography. We're going to look at some portraits now. And if you take a look at, and I don't have an actual model for me, we're just going to look at the Tin Man. And if you look at how sharp it is, I don't think there's a question of which one is sharper. I don't think it's a question of which one's going to give you better focusing between a 16 to 35 and a traditional 35. Or for portraits, maybe you are looking at a 45, a 50. But the versatility of still being able to use this lens to get those really sharp, crisp shots that still has a pleasing bokeh, even if it's not the most bokeh. And even in this studio setting, I really love the way this looks. And then I have the ability to zoom in, zoom out. Let's come in a little bit more. And honestly, I still love just this focal length going back to 24, and it looks really nice to me. But Looking at all of that, if you were going to buy a used 16 or 35 or pre-owned, getting it from B&H or KEH or anywhere reputable seller, generally you're spending about $1,500 to $1,800. And honestly, I think versus getting a wide angle prime, maybe a 24 prime, a 20 prime, and or if you're looking for vlogging, or just a straight 35, I really think this is replacing 2, 3, or sometimes 4 different lenses, and you can use it at every focal range because it's so sharp. One of the biggest differences I enjoyed going from a 16 to 35 Sony Zeiss f4 to this GM was the f4 after about 24 mil really got soft. If you were trying to use it as a 35 millimeter walk around lens, it just wasn't sharp. It didn't look that great. When I put the 35 1.8 prime, I was shocked how big of a difference the 35 from the f4 and the 1.8 made. But when I look at those same images from the GM to your 35 prime, it's not that big of a leap. Obviously, the prime is lighter, it's smaller, it's going to be a little more convenient depending on what you're looking for when you're packing. You just want something simple, but have a versatile zoom that does all of that. And then as far as looking at maybe something like the 17 and the 28, where you are getting from Tamron, you are getting the sharpness and you are getting that fast aperture at 2.8. 17 is not wide enough if you're thinking of doing real estate. If you want to get kind of a broad, really big shot, it just isn't. And 28 is super personal. My first prime was the 28 f2, and I was really blown away by the bokeh that gave. I'm just like, holy cow, the lens makes a difference, especially from like a kit lens. But the 28 mil, at least again, personally for me, I always felt like I was at the wrong range. I needed a step forward, I needed a step back. It looked off, and I didn't know what that was until I got a 35 mil and I really enjoyed it. Now, if you look at some folks like in DP Review, I know he hates the 35 mil and he prefers a 40 or a 50 or whatever it is. And again, that's all personal. So for me, the 17 to 28 never worked because it just wasn't wide enough in the wide end, and that 28 mil I really hated on the zoomed end. So it just wasn't something I enjoyed. And if you are doing the 17 to 28, I really feel like if you are going to use it for like street photography or portraits, you're going to have to get a prime on top of that, in which case you're spending the money on that and you're spending a second lens, in which case you're going to be right around that 1500 mark, which is on the low side of a pre-owned 16 to 35 GM anyway. So if you guys were wondering, is the 16 to 35 worth it? I'm going to say the pre-owned prices at $1,500 to $1,800, absolutely yes, as long as you're getting the versatility and use out of it with everything else that you can do with it. If you're paying full retail, having owned it, I'm going to say, yeah, I probably would have spent that now that I have it in hand. I was fortunate enough to get this at a really good deal where I didn't spend much more than what you normally would spend on a 16 to 35 f4. So for me, it was a no-brainer. And after I've had this lens, I've stopped using my 20 mil. I've stopped using my 35 mil. And I like having the primes, but when this is just on my camera so often, I am selling those, and I hope someone gets those and is able to put into use because they're incredible lenses. They really are. I have replaced it with a prime where I just have that 24 mil 1.4 GM because the low light ability on that and indoor shoots is just phenomenal and can't really be replaced. But for every other use, whether it's street photography, real estate, family use, vlogging, and even astrophotography, which I know I haven't even talked about, this has been a go-to for many years, even though having a faster aperture would obviously be better. That's why I got that 24 1.4. But guys, girls, hopefully this helped you. And if you were thinking of getting the 16 to 35 GM, this puts some perspective on the value, the uses, and how it compares. This is Levi with Tech Ears. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you later.